Welcome everyone to our latest education webinar from Liquid Web. Today, I'm so lucky to be able to host my friend, Bob Dunn. I think he's usually the one hosting me for podcasts and interviews. And now I finally get to switch the tables on him a little bit. And bring him in here to talk to our partner community about creating a content strategy for your WooCommerce store. So, Bob, thank you so much for joining us today. And I can't wait to hear all of your incredible knowledge that you have to share with us.
Well, that's a bit. Now the pressure's on, but I do appreciate having you invite me here because this pretty excited about this because this is always fun to talk about, and I always appreciate any time I can get online with you, however the tables are turned.
Hey, I'll take it, right? Um,
Right.
and for my spiel that I do at the beginning of all of these, you being a partner of Liquid Web and specifically talking about our WooCommerce hosting solutions and sometimes our managed WordPress solutions, as well as iThemes hosting. This is one of the benefits of being a partner and being a part of our partner program, is getting to come in and share your expertise with our community and with our other partners. And then this recording is actually available in our partner gateway for anyone to go back and look at and gain this valuable knowledge about why WooCommerce stores need to have a very specific content strategy in order to succeed. So if anyone's listening today and they want to learn more about the partner program, you can email us at partner-team@liquidweb.com. And without further ado, Bob, I'm going to let you just take it over and share what you have with us.
Okay, great. Now, I want to start out, and I'm not even going to show you a slide. I was trying to find the perfect slide for this, but I've talked about content strategy with WooCommerce stores before to different groups. One of the interesting things is that content, when you mention content to anybody that runs a store, not anybody, but the majority of people, they tend to freeze up. They stress out because content to them is, okay, I'm putting my products on there. I need to sell them. I need conversion and a story. And in the perfect world, that is great, but we do need to get some content in the mix. I mean, everybody hears about content. And I know that for a lot of store owners, depending on the size of your business or your store, you have limited resources, you have, time and money. So that does put a crick in things, and I think one of the important things you need to do is take it in baby steps, find out what works. And what I always start with when I talk about this is I start with what is your focus, basically. And the good thing about this is that you really already have a focus and your online store. I mean, some people want to start a blog and they go, oh, what am I going to blog about? Well, you have a product and that product is your focus. Everything's going to be built around those products or whatever you're selling. If you're selling sportswear, if you're selling kitchen utensils, whatever you're selling, you already have that focus in place. So that's good because a lot of people struggle with that. It's a big picture, but it's good. And at that point, what you really need to start looking at is yourself. Is what is are you a large known brand? Do you have a unique product, or are you selling what everyone else is selling? And this is kind of challenging because it's such a broad area. Are you known? Do you have unique? Are you going to get lost in the mix? And that's how you're going to start looking at all your content, is you're going to have to figure out, where do I fit in with my competitors? Where do I fit in with this massive amount of people that are online? Now, strangely enough, my next slide is an odd one that seems to have popped in, and I'm not sure why. We seem to have lost something here. And I'm going to quickly do something here. Okay, let's just go to this. Sorry for the little glitch there, Lindsay, but you know me, I'll ease right into it.
I know
So
it's
you
okay.
got
You
that
don't have to
bigger,
have the slide. You have the information. It's all good.
you, you have the bigger focus. Now what I'm gonna the next step is a deeper focus. And the deeper focus isn't the hard sell. It's like, don't think right away. I mean, again, we're in that space where we're thinking, okay, we got to create content, but we got to constantly be selling. And yeah, you do have to sell, but it's not the hard sell. So your next focus goes a little bit deeper. You've already got, okay, I sell this. That's it. The next focus is, what do you do with what you're selling? And these are just 4 areas that I talk about. Now, this isn't necessarily covers the whole gamut, because unfortunately, when we're talking online stores, we're talking to so many variables here. Everybody is selling something different. You're selling in different ways. You're selling a combination of products. If you're a huge online retailer of some sort, you're probably selling various products all over the place. I mean, there is maybe not that focus. But once we get down from that one focus to kind of a deeper focus, as I call it. So let's look at this: product demos, how-tos, customer reviews, and storytelling. And these are the 4 areas that you can start looking at what you have, what your audience is, and how that all fits in. So do you have products that actually work with demos? Do your products need instructional information? Those two things are really different. Product demo, I mean, you can only show so much with some products. So, don't think, oh, because you're seeing everybody else do a product demo. No, that isn't the case. You've got to look at, does it need to be demoed? Will somebody watch it on a video, me actually using this product, or somebody using a product? Does it make sense to show them how to use it? And then go to the how-to instructional. Give you an example here. I had bought some softbox lights for my office for video, and I got these horrible instructions with them. I mean, it was a 3-panel instruction that looked like some 3-year-old. Actually, a 3-year-old could have probably done better, but it was 3 panels of really basic instructions that told you how to put them together. Well, I struggled and struggled and struggled. So what I did is, like everybody else, I went to their site, and when I found their how to put it together, they basically gave me a PDF of the same 3 panels, which didn't help me at all. So I ended up going to YouTube, and I found some guy that walked through the whole thing, helped me do it. But the problem was that he showed how much of a pain it was to put these things together, because it wasn't real simple. So it took me back to thinking, hey, would that company have done a how-to video if their product is kind of tough to put together? It doesn't give them a reason for putting together this simple instruction that I couldn't follow. But on the other hand, are they going to put this thing together, make it look easy to put together, and everybody's going to be struggling because they won't admit that it's tough to put together? I know that's kind of convoluted, but that is where you have to start looking at those how-tos. Is it really going to work? Is it going to make sense to show somebody how to put it together, how to use it? The other two kind of go hand in hand: customer reviews and storytelling. You've got this information already there. You've got the basis for content, and this content can come in any kind of medium. I mean, you've got people that are giving you reviews and customers that are happy that, hey, maybe, it's a matter of getting on them and telling uh, what their story is. What is their story? What do they love about your product? And I don't mean just sitting there going, oh, this is a great product. Let's use, outerwear. I mean, outdoor, uh, stuff for hiking, things like that. It- you could get amazing stories, people talking about how they're using. If you could get those customers, talk to the customers, get those customers to actually do videos of them out there using your products in the wild. And that's so much better than them sitting and just talking, talking head that says, hey, I use this tent, it's a great tent. Well, maybe it shows them actually using the tent instead. So there's all these different ways that you take your customer experience, and you either, show them demonstration, show them how to's, or you take what they're saying, the good stuff they're saying, make extended content from that, or have them tell a story. And you can get into the storytelling for your own side of things as far as your business yourself, how this business developed. Maybe you have a unique story behind that. And I know that at Liquid Web, they're huge on storytelling. And it is. It's something that it's been around for, since the caveman. So people have been telling stories, so it's effective. Now, once you've got that in place, you're starting to think, how do I pull this content out? You've got the media to do it. And this is about as basic as you can get. You got text, you got photos, you got video, you got audio. And those four things, you start tying it all together. You think of that bigger focus, you think of, okay, now what's that deeper focus? What am I going to be talking about? Now, how am I going to convey that to everyone? And I've already touched on some of this. Talked about video a lot. Audio, podcasting is huge. Does it work? Photos, another thing. I mean, you can't have an online store without photos, and how you use those photos besides and beyond product photos really depends on what you're selling again. So you've got this whole mix of stuff that's at your fingertips that you can start using. And so you shouldn't really have a shortage of ideas because it's there, it's in front of you. And because of how people are consuming content, you have all these options. It's no longer, oh, I have to sit down and write this long post. I don't like to write, it's going to bore people, whatever. You've got these other three elements that are growing more and more and more. And each one of those you can take, I could talk about each one of those for probably an hour each, which I'm not going to do, obviously. But you're kind of getting the idea how we take each piece and we just branch it out more. And then we get to this point and we say, okay, now what are we going to do with this? If we're going to do stories, what are we going to do? Are we going to have text? Are we going to do, is it going to be blog posts with photos and text? Are we going to get people to do this in video? Do we interview people? Do we have a podcast? Talk about their experiences? All these different things you have to start playing around with. And when the media goes into the next phase of things, we've got, the chatbots, the virtual reality, the augmented reality coming. I mean, chatbots are a lot around support. You see those, you get on there. But I think that also gives chatbots is kind of that middle piece that gives that direction to people to do your content. So if somebody's talking on a chat bot and they have a particular question, you can send them to all this wonderful content you created that answers the question they have. And that is why having that stockpile of content becomes this huge resource for you. And you can use this with all these different tools, virtual reality, augmented reality. I'm not really going to get into that. I think we're still in the infancy of that, and it's going to be interesting to see where that goes with content and store owners, even with the shopping experience that's already being, played with. So how that goes in beyond the shopping experience to the content you create outside of your actual products is so important.
So, Bob, I hate to interrupt, but I have a quick question. Not necessarily
Sure.
about the chatbots, about your previous slide.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are so many different types of multimedia. You do a podcast, you do video, and you obviously are heavy on the written word. Do you think that if someone's coming up with their content strategy, they need to just pick one? Should they try to play in all of these areas, or is it audience specific?
I think it's going to be audience specific and it's going to be a test on your part. First of all, what are you, with the resources you have, what are you most comfortable with? I've talked to people and they say, I like to write posts. That's it.
Hmm.
I like to write. I don't like video. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean you should never do video, but you might want to start there and see how it goes. Of course, you want to branch out. Some
Right.
people, I prefer video. I love being on the video. I think you're going to have to look at and I talk about a little bit analytics. You're going to have to see what people are responding to, and you're going to have
Hmm.
to, get that comfort zone going, whether it's yourself or somebody else doing the content. it's going to need to be focused on what is pulling in the eyes, or whether that's
Right.
reading or video. So I think grab one. It's kind of like social, and I'll talk about that in a minute too. It's grab one and start working with it. Don't
Yeah.
don't sit there and keep going in circles. Say what works for me right now. What's the easiest thing? And I shouldn't say easiest, but in a sense, yeah, what's the easiest thing to transition into this content strategy? Go with that, and you can start branching out.
Yeah, so that makes sense because I mean, it's not that I own a WooCommerce store, but I do a lot of e-commerce shopping. So I do have some experience on that side. But that must be why when I look at a product, sometimes I see 5 photos and then like a video of the product. Because they're probably trying to touch on all of those and see what works, right?
Right. And I think in a perfect world, the more options, the better.
Mm-hmm.
But especially for the smaller shops that are starting out with this, I think it's important not to feel like you need to do everything right away. So find that kind of sweet spot to start testing the waters, and then yeah, you can. And the cool thing about this is everything can be transitioned from one to the next. If you're starting with text, then you can start looking at that text and thinking, how can I, take some of that content and create video out of it, or create
Yeah,
audio out of it. So you always need that starting point. You need to find
yeah.
that comfort zone.
That's perfect. Okay, thanks for letting me interrupt.
Oh, sure. Interrupt as much as you want. The other thing is conquering social with your content. And why I throw in social, even though that's not actually on your site, that's going to become, an, a way to deliver your content. And in a sense, it becomes content in itself. I mean, when you look at what's going on out there. And I just want to cover 4 areas. Again, these are very general, but something you need to think about, especially if you're not doing a lot on social, is, and I already talked about this we kind of just talked about that with the content. It's the same thing with all these social media platforms, finding that sweet spot. Uh, I've talked about social media for, I think, as long as social media has been around. And my thing always has been, don't just think you need to do everything. Find the platform, stick with one. And you may never need to go beyond that one. Maybe that's the one that works for you, but stick with one, see if it works. If it doesn't work, try another platform. Facebook works better for you than Twitter, or vice versa. Do that. Again, kind of depending on what you sell and your audience. And a lot of, I mean, you're going to see a lot of consumer, business and consumer, the sales is going to be on Facebook. As far as thinking, okay, I'm going to start advertising, I say leave it at that, because when you advertise, make it an advertisement, make it a sponsored ad that you put on Facebook. Otherwise, put the content on there that people can use, can be educated with, whether it's entertaining, whatever. Don't just think, okay, again, you go back to that whole thing of I'm going to sell, sell, sell. Well, leave the advertising as advertising. You can buy ad spots and do that, but all that other content should lead people to possibly, hopefully, purchasing your product or making a conversion. But don't always think I got to be advertising on there. A picture is worth 1,000 words sometimes, I say, because again, there's certain platforms that work better for pictures. I mean, Instagram's like a no-brainer, and you're going into any saturated market on any of these platforms. I mean, we know you're on social, you see it all the time. So you got to be real careful where, you're putting the pictures and what the pictures are saying. If the pictures are just product pictures on Facebook, they may not get the same response as they do on Instagram. So again, you got to start testing the waters and find out where the images work for you. And what you see isn't always what they get. I mean, don't ever give them a false sense of hope with anything you sell. And I see this, it's kind of advertising, it's gimmicky, it's been around since business has been around and stuff. Um, what you see isn't necessarily what they get from it. They're not going to always, you're going to, especially when you're a smaller online store, you start to realize that you're doing things thinking, oh, I see it as this way. This is great. This is great. But what they get out of it may be completely different. They may take it the wrong way. They may take it more as an ad. So those four areas are something you really have to be careful with, especially in social, because social is a huge thing. It's and I hate to phrase it this way, but a necessary evil for most of us. And there's ways to use it right, and almost like going back to the content, you got to find that way, and it doesn't come to you. It doesn't always come to you easily in the beginning. It's a matter of putting that strategy together. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this, and this doesn't work. Well, then I'm going to try this. It's something that you have to hang in there, and we know that nothing happens overnight. Now, one of the things I mentioned is, and this is kind of something I've always talked about, blogging without blogging. And it's something I've been talking about this ever since I think blogging, I got into it in like 2007, 2008. And this was not even for online stores or in the e-commerce space. This was just typically blogging. And these are my two pictures. I'm going to have to do two pictures. So when I talk to a store owner, WooCommerce store owner, I say, okay, let's get you blogging. I'm going to get two of one things. I'm going to get them looking like this, which is typically what I see. It's just like, okay, say what? Blogging. They get this kind of, they get a very concerned look on their face. And what I want you to do is be like this. I want you to say, oh, okay. What I mean by blogging without blogging is simply use the power of blogging. WordPress is built to get content out there and to that's the power of it. That's the beauty of WordPress. And this is through categories, search engine optimization, and keeping your content fresh, which I'll go into in a bit. But what I'm saying is, we think of when somebody says start a blog, right away we start thinking of these long posts. And that's what gets us in this, oh my, I can't write. I don't have anybody. What are we going to, it's that writing long content that you think is going to have to be engaging. And, it just doesn't happen that easily. So instead, look at the actual technical structure of what a blog is on your site and use that instead. So a couple real basic examples of this is if you're selling anything to do, and I'm going to go back to kitchenware. If you're selling kitchenware, maybe you use the blogging aspect of your site to share recipes. It's content that you can put up there and you can organize and you can make useful to your readers and your potential customers. It doesn't have to be content that always is like just, an epiphany of, woo, wow, I'm walking away, just blown away. If you're selling, maybe you sell ebooks on your store. You pull content, maybe it's reviews, whatever. It's a matter of thinking of just, I can take some kind of content and I can manage it and organize it and create it. And maybe it's content I can almost repurpose from something else I already have. I can pull it out and have these simple posts, I'm going to call them posts, and that content can come out and keep things fresh. It can, you can work on it with the SEO. Video is a perfect example of this, creating videos. It's, some people may call it vlogging, but it really is, putting videos on constantly or every once in a while. It doesn't matter that you think, okay, I've got a blog, I got to put something up 5 days a week or I need to do it every day because that's what everybody's telling me. No, just keep something fairly consistent and keep something fresh and use the WordPress, the technical part of WordPress and posts to put that content out. And that content could be a number of things. Now, the other part of it is, I've kind of touched on just creating the content and coming up with ideas. And again, very, very broad. And I wish I could, narrow down, but if I narrow down one point, then that would probably, meet, 2% of the people listening or that will be watching this, where there's, again, so many variables in the e-commerce space that you got to look at that bigger picture. The managing your content. We get so hooked up into our online store, WordPress, WooCommerce, and maintaining and managing is the technical aspects of it. And that's critical. I mean, we got to be doing that. We got to be keeping things updated. We have to make sure everything's in working order, all that technical pieces. And sometimes we get so fixated on that stuff that we don't pay attention to the same kinds of things that need to be worked with our content. And managing your content can hit a lot of different areas. And I just wanted to give a couple of tools as examples for that because, and these are plugins that I use specifically. I'm not pushing the specific plugin because if you can find another one that does the same thing, but these are a couple different ways to manage your content that will save you tons of time. Now I'm going to explain these three things. I'm not going to give you a bunch of screenshots of these plugins, and I will be giving you a link at the end of this that will give you links to different posts on one of our three sites that will walk you through deeper into this stuff and give you a better idea of how to use it and how it could help you. But we don't quite have the time to do that. With your content, I'm talking about an editorial calendar, a workflow, and to-do lists. And there's this plugin called Publish Press. And the reason I'm using that again is it does all three of these things. First of all, you're going to have an editorial calendar. This is ideal. It's going to be a calendar in your dashboard. It's going to look just like a calendar, and you're going to put in posts there. And those posts are, you're going to put in ideas, potential ideas. If you're, a lot of online stores are going to be around the holidays. There's certain times of the year you're focusing on certain things. You can start planning out that content, and it's a good visual because you can go in there and see what you have filled up for certain periods of time and where you need to find stuff for certain other periods of time. So it's a real great way to just, if you're a single person, if you're, 2 or 3 people, or if you have a huge team that's going in there, it just gives everybody a bird's eye view of the content you're putting out there. And you can easily shift them around and move them around. So it makes it really nice. Now the workflow and to-do lists, these are things if you can use, again, if you just have a couple people or if you have a team, and it's important to have that workflow in place. For example, this particular plugin will allow you to create status. So when you're in WordPress and you've got you're doing your product in WooCommerce or you're doing your post or whatever you're doing, you have the static of published or, draft. Well, this allows you to give all these different statuses. So you could have the status be add video, needs SEO done. And it could even be your product pages that need product image, need pricing finalized, all these different things. And what you can do is you can create these statuses and change these statuses and then create an email workflow. So if Lindsay and me were working on something and Lindsay did the editing for my posts, I could have this status I would create that I would just have the menu down just like you do draft and published in your WordPress posts, and it could say something like send to Lindsay. So I could click that, save it, it wouldn't publish it, and it would be this email that would be automatically sent to Lindsay that would say, okay, this is in your hands now, you get to edit it. Once she's done editing it, you could have it go to another person or she could simply schedule it. So it really gets things organized. I mean, things aren't left just hanging, and the content gets done when it needs to be done. One of the other cool things this does is to-do lists, and this puts, I mean, you probably use to-do lists everywhere in your life. This puts it actually in your dashboard, right on your product page or on your posts. And what you can do is you can create to-do lists, basically. You know, if you're doing it for your content, you may want to say, okay, I need to make sure there's a video in it, or I made sure the featured image is part of it. Or if it's your product, you may need to say, there's a minimum word count you want on the description. There's all these scenarios you can do. And what happens is you have this little checklist in the side, you see it and you see what's been done, what's not. And if you actually go to save it, it'll put this exclamation point that it'll say, hey, something isn't done, basically. It'll alert them. And that's, in fact, I think it even has a pop-up that'll pop up and say, hey, you haven't done this part of it. Of course, if it's not needed, they can still go ahead and schedule it or publish it. But if it is needed, at least they see it right there and then. And if you're like me, I do so many different things to my content that I need that there, because I always will forget something, and it's a good reminder. So that's a great way for that part of the content. The other part of the content is your media and your content as far as how you manage it on your site. And what I mean by media is, your images. And if you do videos, hopefully you don't host videos on your site. It's always better to have an external host and stream them in. But if for all those product shots you have and all those other shots you may have for your content, all that stuff is going to be in that media library. It's going to be just a mess. You're going to go in there and you're searching for things and trying to remember what you called it, and you spend all this time in there. And there's a few plugins out there that does this. There's one called Wicked Folders plugin. It's kind of an interesting name, but it does this. It allows you to create folders for all your media. So you could have folders for media that is specifically for posts. You could have it actually separates out all the kinds of media from audio, video to images. It also will allow you to organize your product shots. So you can organize your product shots by categories or create your own folder name. And that way you can go in and find this stuff a lot easier. So it's basically just, you'll see on the side of your media library, you'll see all these folders, and you can click on a folder, and this folder has, back to kitchenware blenders, or it could even go down to a brand of blenders. A lot easier to find what images in your media library. So those are a couple really good ways to manage your content. And there's probably other ways you'll discover, but that just gives you a couple of good examples. And on some of my resources, I tell you a little bit more about that. Then the other side of things is maintaining your content. And I think this is even more important than the actual management, and it's something that often gets neglected. Again, we go back to your site. You're maintaining your site, the technical side of things, all the time. You're wanting to make sure, because God, you gotta keep this thing running, and it's important, it's critical. But sometimes that content can sit there and it doesn't get maintained. There's a few things I want to talk about that. First of all, updating and repurposing your content. Keep your content updated. I mean, this is really as basic as it gets. I mean, if you're going to create content that needs to be updated, especially if you start getting into demos or tutorials or anything that changes, I mean, your product changes, that needs to change. There's nothing more frustrating to anyone than going to something and seeing instructions or seeing a demo of something that is the old version of whatever, if they've added new features to it, or it could even be as simple as the color of it, which unfortunately, that could be a real pain updating that content. But it's important on that user end of things, because it can be very frustrating. And on the repurposing side of things, I had already talked a little bit with Lindsay about the content and how you're thinking, especially how to take that content and move from text into video or audio into video, or whatever that content you're starting with. You can repurpose content like crazy. I mean, there's so many ways you can pull out content from other stuff. I mean, you can, from videos, you can pull out bits of the transcript and make that a separate post. Maybe a certain part of that video is a standalone piece. Same with audio, and everything that you're doing with your kind of the old-fashioned repurposing of content is if you go in and you give a tip, 10 tips on how to use this particular product, or 10 tips on getting the most out of it, then you've got 10 separate blog posts and ideas already. So expand them out and you don't have to start from scratch again. So you take each one of those 10 tips, create a post within that for that, and it goes deeper into the benefits of that particular tip. So just again, updating and repurposing, and do keep your posts updated. I mean, not updated, dated is what I'm saying. This is a real killer. And I've seen a lot of sites that they want to, some content can be called evergreen where it doesn't matter, but you really want to have a date on there. You want people to be able to relate to when this was told, even if it's a story, one of your customer stories. Maybe this story is like 5 years old and it's really still relevant, but they're talking about something in that time and you're listening to it and you're thinking, well, that's kind of weird. What's going on? That date gives a bit of context to what the whole piece of content is about. Make sure you're following your analytics. I mean, this is a great way to maintain your site. See what's working, see what's not. I could have Lindsay take over right now, and she loves talking, and we could be here for another 3 hours talking about analytics, but I won't do that. I'll instead just, get into your Google Analytics, see what, especially with your content, not so much your products, I'm talking about your content. See what people are, what turns them on, what they're reading. See what the most high ranking posts are. Do something with those posts. Add more content to it. Maybe upsell a little bit in it. Repurpose it. Do something with it. Don't just let it sit there and you're thinking, oh, it's doing so much already. It could even do more. So always be watching those numbers and don't just pay attention. I know you love watching those analytics on your products and those conversions and why people are abandoning carts and all that stuff. But if you're putting some time and investment into your content, make sure you're actually paying attention to those analytics as well. And broken links and redirects. Real quick, nothing's worse than broken links. Use a broken link checker plugin. It's a free plugin. You're going to change. Things are going to be, it's going to happen, especially if you're doing external links for any reason. Nothing is more frustrating than getting that 404 page. And this easily tells you what links are broken and you can fix them. And Google doesn't like it either. So, make sure you get those taken care of. Redirects, if you're deleting a post, and even if you're deleting a product, find a way to redirect it. Don't just delete the content. And the Yoast SEO Premium has a really great built-in redirect, and then there's a free plugin, redirection plugin. But basically what it's doing is you're going to point it to another like product. For products, just a tip, one of the suggestions is that if you get rid of a product entirely and you don't want to send it to the product category. So at least people are sent to that. If they go find that old link that just doesn't exist anymore, that product, they're sent somewhere besides that horrible error page. So keep that in mind. Automate your social sharing. That's a way of maintaining your site. I use Social Web Suite. There's a ton out there, but don't feel bad about automating. And the thing I like about this particular plugin is it allows you to do custom shares. So one of the things is you don't always want that content if you're going to automate it and just put things in a what do I want to say? I can't assembly line and shoot it out. You don't want the same things just showing up. This allows you to create 6, 7, 8 custom messages. So when it goes out, people aren't always reading the same one, and you can focus a little bit more on specific parts of what you're trying to get people to, draw them to the content by having more than one custom message. And there's other benefits as well, but get some kind of automation into your social sharing. And you cannot do anything without these four. These are kind of, these are all the things you think of with maintaining your site, speed, performance, SEO, mobile friendly, accessibility, but all of those have a direct effect on your content. And your content plays a huge part, how people access that content, what they're able to, accessibility is the content available for everyone? Is the content SEO? Have you worked on that? Is it look good on mobile? And are you, the content you're putting in there, the videos or streaming in videos, but maybe the images, the performance, is that slowing things down? So you need to have that whole working part all together. Most importantly, get the help you need when you need it. This is overwhelming. It's a lot of stuff that I've talked about. You're probably thinking, whoa, where do I go from here? Get the help. Get people that can do this, outsource where you need to outsource it, and do what's important for yourself to be spending your time doing. So I think that's it, Lindsay. I'm gonna just kind of leave this here, and that was a really quick whirlwind type of overview, I guess.
I think it's asking a lot for someone that does content like for a living, as you do, to come in and talk about it in, 35 or 40 minutes. So thank you so much for parsing it down, as you have. And like he said, the resources are here at bobwp.com/LW webinar. And there are many articles on the website for you to look at. I also, before we get to questions, want to plug our $1 Million Milestone Summit that we are doing on Tuesday. I'm going to pop that URL in the chat real quick. We have 10 experts coming in that have reached that $1 million or more, and who are going to come in and talk about how you can achieve the same revenue goals in your business. So if you haven't already, please sign up for that. It's another excellent education opportunity that we have. Okay, so let's get into questions now, Bob. So I think there was some stuff that I wanted to hear about that is like product specific. Like, is there different content that you do that is on a product page as opposed to, a blog post or other education that you're doing?
I think that I think one of the cool things now is that we're heading towards a little bit more flexibility, especially when it comes to WooCommerce and the product page with blocks and everything. It's given us the ability to start pulling in. We don't want to, first of all, we don't want to, go crazy with these product pages. I mean, we want
Mm-hmm.
people to buy it. So we don't want to put in a lot of extra content. And of course, the descriptions and what we're able and have been able to put in there is critical. But the fact that we can now put in video and some other content, I think
Mm-hmm.
that, it just adds. And again, it's not for the sake of it that you're able to do it. I think that's what people think. Oh, wow, it's cool. Now I can do this. It's going back to that whole idea of, does this make that moment? And I always try to think, and it's not the easiest thing to think of, but when you're on that product page, does it make the moment of, if there's a video there, is that going to hopefully edge them towards staying there, making that purchase, or is it going to be a distraction? And so any kind of content you put on there, I think video probably is more appropriate than a lot of the other mediums. I mean, I can't see,
Mm-hmm.
putting an audio on there. That seems kind of, unless there was something specific it made sense to for that particular
Right.
product. But yeah, I think that there's ways. I know that there's stuff coming out now in the WooCommerce space with blocks being able to create more custom visual product pages, not that just a
Mm-hmm.
little picture that you had there before.
Yeah,
You can make it bigger. And again, it all boils down to that. Is that picture going to really, if you're making it 4 times bigger now, is it worth it being 4 times bigger? If it's a kitchen knife, no, probably not. I mean, it seems common sense, but
right,
because you can make it bigger, it's got to be something that captures that moment where they're in there and they're just like, it's almost, I don't want to
right.
say it takes away their breath, but it's gotta still line in with that, that non-distraction and smoothly fit into the whole page where you're not just sending people off into some, down some rabbit hole they shouldn't be going.
Absolutely. Okay, so Dave posted a question in here and asked if there is okay, so he's uncomfortable, he says, with writing in general. So is there an optimal link that you think is good for a blog post?
A blog post, it
Yeah.
used to be, what's really funny is it used to be, man, ask me that tomorrow and I'll probably give you a different answer because everybody says, it used to be, okay, short blog posts, minimum of this much. Now everybody's talking about long content. This is
Yeah.
what Google likes. Now, what we've got here is we've got a fine line that we're playing with is what Google likes is maybe not what your customer likes. And
Mm.
so deep, long content, I think, is good, and there's a place for it if the subject area calls for it.
Mm-hmm.
But to do it for the sake of long content, I think they say to have at least about for SEO purposes to have, well, I think a 350 word, that's kind of the minimum you want.
Right.
I always tell people if your post covers what you want to say, it gives them, the reader, the useful information and the education you want to give them, it really doesn't matter. I
Right.
think it's more the context than the length. I think we
Mm-hmm.
focus too much on, oh, this isn't long like this one. It's some posts just can't be long. And
Right.
if you start getting in that frame of mind that everything needs to be a certain length, you're going to start putting fillers in or leaving stuff out that's important. So I would say do what's comfortable for you and start
Mm-hmm.
and even watch and throw in, if you can do a long form post every once in a while, do it. That's going to help with the SEO. But
Right.
but do something and just, again, watch those numbers, see what kinds of posts are pulling in the eyes.
It's a long form post with clear title and sections and big bold words, because that's what we do, right? Is we
Right.
like all of the long form, but we just glaze over it anyway. So
Yeah, yeah,
write a
exactly. And it
sentence in your titles for your sections, and by the
yeah,
time they read the most important sentence when they get down to the end.
right.
Okay, so Sadie has a question as well. She's wondering if, so she's fairly new to video recording. What do you use to record it whenever you're doing your content?
I it was interesting because I was talking to a couple video people about this that were not so much on the sales side of things, just hopefully, more on the resource side of things. And they said, use what there's our smartphones even have good video in
Mm-hmm.
them. I mean, ideally, we'd like to get the big production, the fancy one and stuff. But if you're doing a kind of a simpler video, I say use if you have something, check out you may need to get a tripod or something to hold it firm, unless you'd like the
Mm-hmm.
bouncy, whatever. But do a test one, look at it and think, maybe it isn't like, you know, super high quality. There's
Right.
the webcams, if you're at your computer, the
Mm-hmm.
webcams, those are really priced out fairly good. I'm trying to think. I think I used Logitech, one of them.
Do you need
And
a software when you use your computer webcam?
I when I use my webcam, I use a software for editing. So if you want to get in and edit, I use Camtasia for Mac,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of many that are out there and stuff. Uh, you know, it depends. Yeah, if you want to edit, if you want to add things into it and stuff, if you want kind of a rough, just I'm sitting down here. you can just put it out as is,
Yeah.
but you do want to probably get in and edit a little bit. And I think I'm trying to think. There's probably a number screencasts. I think is it screencast? I'm
Yeah,
trying to
that
remember.
sounds
Yeah,
familiar.
that's another one. And there's several of them out there. You can't really go wrong. The more expensive they are, the more bells and whistles they have, and probably a lot of this
Right.
stuff you don't need. So.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's all the questions we have today. So if I see that there are several attendees in here that are already partners at Liquid Web, but if you are not a partner of Liquid Web and you want to learn more about our managed WooCommerce hosting or our managed WordPress hosting and how the partner program can help you, then you can email us at partner-team@liquidweb.com and let them know that Bob sent you. So thank you for your time today, Bob. It's always a pleasure to get to see you and for sharing your knowledge with us.
And thank you so much, Lindsay.
All right, everyone, have a happy Tuesday or happy Thursday.
Yep.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.